Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Our tradition is to introduce ourselves before we introduce our speakers. So we can just go around the room and do that. My name is Bruein.
George.
My name is David.
I'm Jerry.
Leor.
James.
My name is John.
My name is Conrad.
Marvin.
My name is Bill Hurley.
I'm Joe Castro-Vinci.
My name is Michael.
I'm Richard Azzolini.
I'm Jack.
Bob Agee.
Craig.
My name is Tom.
Patrick.
I'm Cole Lee Robbins.
Gary.
Baruch.
Richard.
My name is Tony.
I'm Bruce.
George. My name is Eric.
My name is Roger.
My name is Michael.
My name is Manuel.
David.
Roger.
Doug Hall.
Did we miss anyone?
I think
David.
Welcome, everyone. Our speaker today is Pauletta Chanco. Pauletta is a longtime student and practitioner of meditation in the Theravada Buddhist tradition. She was recently nominated to the Community Dharma Leadership Program at Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Woodacre and hopes to begin this in 2012. She has taught beginning and ongoing meditation classes at Alameda Yoga Station since 2007. Pauletta has a daily meditation practice and incorporates spiritual practice in her daily life interactions and shares her insights in her passing on of the teachings with real-life experiences. She's a mother of 3 children aged 13, 15, and 29. Pauletta is also a professional fine artist whose abstract paintings are inspired by her meditation and spiritual practice. Pauletta, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here, especially because you guys are so lucky to have such a beautiful space. Right in the middle of the busy city. Who would ever know? And the parking, just the stress-free parking, is just wonderful. Because who would want to be contracted during meditation, right? Thinking, oh, is my car going to be okay? So that's been really great. And I'm also very honored to be here because I am, after all, a fledgling Dhamma teacher. But I have been practicing for a long time. And having said that, I am a householder in the extreme sense of the word. I've been married to my partner for 17 years now, and we have 3 children. And next year, we're going to be grandparents. So in all these different realms of daily life, there have been very rich and poignant areas in which to apply the Buddhist teachings. And, it's just been so helpful, I can't tell you, but I think you'll get a flavor of that today. And I'm very excited to offer what I know about cultivation of the mind. And that's the title of my talk today. And what that really is about mind training practices that we can employ. And it's something that I've been involved in personally as the focus of my spiritual practice for the last 2 years, ever since it got introduced to me at a retreat. And I say introduced, but it's very pervasive in most of the teachings of the Buddha, but it's probably the time in which I actually got it. So 2 really important aspects right off the bat about these mind training practices is that, first of all, the Buddha engaged in them before he even reached enlightenment. So that to me was like, wow, that's so hopeful. That means that we can all, do this and actually have some measure of success and much less suffering in our lifetimes without having to, get to the point that he did, which was enlightenment after, or awakening after however long he spent sitting under the Bodhi tree. And he says so himself. So the talk is going to be in two short parts. The first part being, I will probably read 2 or 3 passages from this sutta that's all about how to work with the mind. And it's in the Majjhima Nikaya, which are the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, and it's number 19. And it's the Devadavitaka Sutta, translated in English as 2 kinds of thoughts. So there's a lot to offer in this sutta alone, but I'm just going to give you guys a flavor because of the time. And the second is 3 really good, solid techniques that you can actually try out this week once you are engaged in your daily life and see if it does work for you. And I tried them right away when, I was first exposed to them, and it does work. So that's the good news. The second important part to know about cultivating the mind and this whole process of doing that is there are 2 really, I would say, pretty significant aspects to all of our lives here on earth that we have absolutely no control over. And one is our physical bodies. However we can spend money up the wazoo on cosmetic surgery, and unfortunately, I have to tell you that is not going to prevent us from aging, getting sick, and eventually dying. Because basically, from the time that we are born and come into this earth as a sentient human being, we are moving every day, every moment even, closer towards dying and aging and getting sick in the process. And the second thing that we have no control over is just, the kind of dukkha or suffering that comes our way that, we never asked for, but it just somehow lands in our lap. Either getting diagnosed with a terminal cancer, as serious or grave as something like that, being part of, in Haiti, the cholera epidemic that's going on. That's like even several notches more intense. And they certainly didn't ask for that. But in our own daily lives, kind of the ordinary aspect of it, we also get landed things, like stress at work or having to interface with somebody difficult that we don't particularly care for. All of these are things we have no control over. But the good news about this cultivating the mind and mind training practices that the Buddha has offered us is that we can actually control our response and our reaction to these situations. Getting diagnosed with terminal cancer. We don't have to add the extra suffering of what our mind tends to do around these things. Or when we interface with somebody that, I really don't want to talk to my sister because she's just such a difficult person. To be able to have the space through our practice and the simple techniques that he offers to, be able to face up to her in a way that's not so contracted and giving yourself and your mind all this, I love this Pali word, papancha, and it translates to mental proliferation. So sometimes, when you interface with somebody that's difficult or you're about to face a difficult situation, you have all this obsessive thinking around it, but the mind training techniques will help you get through it. So having said that, I'd like to, before I read the 2 or 3 passages in the sutta, start with probably the most important utterance in this sutta number 19 that the Buddha said, and that was, "Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind." And I think that is so profound. Let me read it one more time. "Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind." So for me personally, in my childhood, my parents were both extremely negative people. And so, of course, that rubbed off on me. And as a consequence, I would, meet situations that would arise. That expression, glass half empty or glass half full. So I'm the negative aspect of that, unfortunately. But through the practice, I've been able to sometimes catch myself and realize, ooh, do I really want to be focusing on the negative here? Because after all, whatever situation that comes up for us, there's so much about it that we really can't control, much as we would like it to have a certain outcome. So let's see, the first, I'd like to read the first or second passage. Oh, before that, I'm sorry, I wanted to read from Shantideva's A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Some of you may have heard of this, and he was a Buddhist master in 8th century India in a monastic university of Nalanda. And so he wrote this entire treatise, A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And this particular short passage that I'm going to read to you has to do with, getting yourself to think about your mind and how it works. So this is from chapter 5, and it's called Guarding Alertness. "Those who wish to guard their practice should very attentively guard their minds, for those who do not guard their minds will be unable to guard their practice. In this world, unsubdued and crazed elephants are incapable of causing such harms as the miseries of the deepest hell, which can be caused by the unleashed elephant of my mind. However, if the elephant of my mind is firmly bound on all sides by the rope of mindfulness, all fears will cease to exist, and all virtues will come into my hand. However, if the elephant of my mind is firmly bound on all sides by the rope of mindfulness, all fears will cease to exist, and all virtues will come into my hand." So I think it's really, he's already touching upon the first technique of mind training that I will offer you after we look at the sutta, and that is the cultivation of mindfulness, which is really important. But the fact that you guys are here and you come, relatively every Sunday to sit and meditate and be in Sangha is already, a step towards that cultivation of mindfulness. So in this sutta number 19, the Buddha says, bhikkhus, and that's a word that means, a Pali word that means monks, because he's addressing his monks. Bhikkhus, before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, it occurred to me, suppose that I divide my thoughts into two classes. Then I set on one side thoughts of sensual desire, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of cruelty. So you get a sense that he's dividing thoughts into two classes, and first he's talking about the unwholesome column. And I set on the other side thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of none ill will, and thoughts of none cruelty. So that would be on the column of wholesome ways to incline our mind. And that's what he is referring to. So in the unwholesome column, I just wanted to briefly go over each category. So he first talks about sensual desire. And one thing that I do want to clarify before we even venture into what this means exactly is that it's been my experience, and I know that it has been for many, that when you are exposed to the Buddhist teachings and you hear him talk about the unwholesomeness or unskillfulness of sensual desire, you could mistakenly get the impression that, oh, I'm not supposed to have any desires. Oh my gosh, even my desire for chocolate is bad. But that is not what he is pointing to at all. He's simply, when he talks about sensual desire, it's when the desire manifests itself as a craving for what is thought to bring happiness. So that's what makes it unwholesome, when it kind of borders into the territory of taking over your entire psyche, so that you might even do destructive things just to get it, whatever it is. And I will give you a personal example. The second that he talked about in the unwholesome column of ways that we should not try to incline our mind is ill will. And by that, we can also take that to include things like anger, irritation, all the difficult emotions that we tend to manifest in our daily lives, and even in our minds, where we tend to go with that. And then the last is cruelty. So with sensual desire, for me personally, it has manifested, and it's still in process of healing, I would say, but I'm definitely working on it with the techniques in the Buddhist teachings, has manifested for me as a shoe addiction. And so through the years, I just can't have enough shoes. And and it would take really, really unskillful manifestations. With my partner, I'd tell him, I'd come up with all these strategies and reasons why, and justifications why I need to have yet this other pair of shoes, I don't have anything like it in my wardrobe, and it would really enhance what I do have. Just all these things. It was crazy. But so I've practiced with it, and it's gotten a lot better, and I should say, that it's not completely eradicated. I will have actual, warning bell sounds in my mind if I'm walking down Fillmore and I see a cute shoe store, and I'm just like, oh my God, oh my gosh. But I have practiced, and so it's gotten less intense. And then I've even practiced to the point of, seeing a pair of shoes that I really would feel that I need to have for the sake of my happiness, and just turned away from it and said, no, I'm not going to do it this time. And then I tell you, 2 days later, I'm not even thinking about them anymore. Right? So that's the nature of sensual desire when it's so unhealthy. And then anger and ill will, that's also been something that I'm sure we can all relate to. And for me, my husband and I have both very, very strong personalities. In fact, some people told us because of our astrological signs, we should not get married. And so, because we both have really strong personalities, we've tended to be very stubborn and wanting things a certain way. So anger has been, in the early years of our marriage, a real issue, and has really gotten destructive at times, until finally we were just like, you know what? We have to deal with it. And I was starting to move into getting introduced to Buddhism and meditation. And, Thich Nhat Hanh even has a great book called Anger that I highly recommend for any of you that want to go in that territory. And so what happens when we don't see the warning signs of anger that is moving towards escalation and can really get destructive is that we actually become the anger. I mean, when I think about it now of how I used to get in rages, and he as well, it was like, you're not even grounded. You're not in touch with your body. You can't find your breath. You're just like a solid ball of anger. And it's really disturbing, because it's like you have nothing to hold on to, and it's like out of control, So that is why he mentions ill will, which anger falls in this category as definitely something we can work with through mind training, and so my husband and I, of course, we still fight, but the cool thing is that it never gets into really, really bad escalation anymore, especially because for myself, with the practice and mindfulness, your awareness increases to the point of where you can catch it. You see that it's coming. You shine a light on it. I mean, we've actually said to each other, ooh, I really feel, this is making me angry. I think we need to do something, either take a break or, and come back in 10 minutes or, try to change the course of where this is going. And you'll be surprised just by doing that. It's like a verbalization. It's like you're shining a flashlight on it, so it dissipates the power. And then with cruelty, what I believe the Buddha was talking about here is that sometimes, when we get really angry because we feel that people or an institution or some situation has wronged us, and then we start, with our minds, either in sitting in meditation, because as you know, that is a time that is ripe for thoughts to come and a lot of scheming and strategizing, or just plain old reflection. You're driving on the freeway and you start thinking about it. So what'll happen is you'll actually, and I know this to be true and I admit it fully, start having bad thoughts like, ooh, I wish I could find some way of getting back at this person. I don't like what this person did to me and how dare they. So he is pointing to that, what I just said, of how our mind can actually go in that direction. So we haven't even committed any kind of unskillful action yet, all right? We're just contemplating it. But he is saying, through cultivating the mind, that that's already dangerous, okay? And it's probably more dangerous to ourselves than the other person because we're all knotted up. I mean, try it for yourselves the next time you're sitting in meditation, and if an incident comes up for you while you're sitting, that's really, you're moving in that direction of saying, ooh, how can I get back at this really nasty person? Try to take yourself out of the story and the details of the situation and see how it feels in the body. It's not fun. It's not good. I mean, there is like really tight contraction for me in my chest and my belly. And when you see that, ooh, this is what's happening to me as I'm thinking these bad thoughts. I mean, it actually can give you pause. But most of the time, we just react and we go there with our minds, without taking a little bit of space to notice it in our bodies. And that, in and of itself, is an important practice. So then he goes on to reflect on the danger of entertaining unwholesome thoughts. And this is when I mentioned shining the light on it and how it dissipates in power. So he says, as I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of sensual desire arose in me. I understood thus, this thought of sensual desire has arisen in me. This leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, and to the affliction of both. So by affliction of both, he means to yourself and to others. So with my shoe addiction, I suppose it's the way that it affects me because I think somehow this new pair of shoes is going to be the answer to my happiness. And then how it would afflict others, my husband, because it's coming out of our pocketbook. And it's usually, expensive shoes that I tend to want. So it obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana. And nibbana being enlightenment or liberation. When I considered this leads to my own affliction, it subsided in me. When I considered this leads to others' affliction, it subsided in me. When I considered this leads to the affliction of both, it subsided in me. When I considered this obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana, it subsided in me. Whenever a thought of sensual desire arose in me, I abandoned it, removed it, did away with it. And so in the wholesome column, when he talks about, he says, renunciation, none ill will, and none cruelty. And so by renunciation, I'm not really happy with that word. It is the English translation of nikama in the Pali. And renunciation as a translation has kind of a negative connotation. And for myself personally, I was born and raised a Roman Catholic, and so renunciation means giving up, depriving yourself. But when the Buddha talks about nikama, which is what the Pali word translated into English is renunciation, what nikama in and of itself really means, and the real sense of that word that he is talking about, has nothing to do with giving up or depriving yourself, but it's more of a letting go. So the practices that I engaged in to help me with my shoe addiction was truly leading me in the direction of letting go, letting go of the needing to have these shoes. Then with ill will and anger, the wholesome thought that opposes that, he says none ill will, but we can also think of it as a kind of loving kindness. So when you're caught up in anger with somebody you care about, or somebody at work, to really give yourself, stop and take the time to give yourself loving kindness, to recognize, almost like you're comforting a baby. Oh, maybe you should just take a little step back, take some deep breaths, take care of yourself, because you're starting to get really, revved up inside and contracted because you're moving towards anger. And then the cruelty thing of where, even if it's just a simple annoyance with someone, and you're just, having obsessive thinking about, oh, how do I deal with this person? Oh, she's so annoying. So that is kind of pointing towards this unwholesome inclining of the mind of cruelty. So the wholesome component of non-cruelty we can think of as karuna, or compassion. And that would entail, in a concrete form of practice, as thinking of this annoying person and actually trying to focus on his or her good qualities, as difficult as that sounds to be able to do. It's really quite and can be an effective practice. So I wanted to now give all of you the daily life mind training techniques that I think you can try out this week and see how it does for you. The first is known as the cultivation of mindfulness, which I mentioned you guys are pretty much doing. The ideal situation, of course, would be to establish, if you haven't already, a daily sitting practice. Because just that commitment and intention to move towards stillness for however long, it doesn't have to be 30 or 40 minutes. It could even just be 10 minutes. One, you're intending to take care of yourself, by giving yourself this time to just really move away from all the clutter of our daily lives that sometimes come at us without us wanting it to be there, right? We all know that. And then by having a daily sitting practice, it really does, over time, and it doesn't take very long, it increases awareness. So when I talk about how I've worked with anger with my partner, the awareness is there because we both can, not always at the same time, but one of us does because we've been committed to practicing this way. The awareness is there to notice the signs. Oh gosh, this could really get bad because I feel this irritation burning in my chest, and we got to do something here to change this. just even to take a break. So that's what the cultivation of mindfulness does. And of course, it slows you down. Especially say you're starting to get stressed at work and you realize, whoa, okay, I need to slow down here because I'm feeling pressured. I got to meet this deadline. And every step I'm taking towards trying to achieve that end is really not constructive, right? So you slow down enough to notice that this is happening. And then even have time, a little bit of time in our sitting meditation to investigate it. Investigate, why are we so annoyed with this person? Is there any way we can work with this annoyance so that, maybe less of it is there, or reach some kind of understanding with the person? And so the second technique to use in our daily lives is to actually take some time to reflect, either in sitting meditation or just, taking some quiet time for yourself, to have the intention to reflect and observe and track the mental activity that brings you distress. What is it? What is it that triggers it? What is it that triggers the anger? Is it something that, my partner tends to bring up, and it's just like this area that moves me towards anger? And if so, if it's this particular thing that he constantly brings up, why is that? Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's look at the root causes of why this makes me angry. And a lot of the practice of investigation in this manner entails really being in touch with your body. I can't tell you how helpful I have found that to be. Just really like bringing your attention to what's going on with your body. I will often feel like if there's fear behind the anger that I'm having with my partner, it's, tension in my shoulders. I actually feel my shoulders going like this, and it's really bizarre, But it's good to notice, because then it brings you closer to a kind of resolution and a way of working with what it is that is bringing up this mental distress. So that's just one example. Another example could be what I mentioned earlier, papancha, where you have a lot of mental proliferation. So this thought of worry is on and on. It's like a broken record, and you just can't get rid of it, right? And so you recognize that it's a worry, and you try to investigate it. And the worst thing you can do is try to push it away and say, oh, this is so unreasonable, I shouldn't be thinking of it. But actually feel, once again, how it manifests in your body. Ooh, this obsessive worrying feels like this. My tummy's all contracted, and it's all tight, and I can't even breathe into my belly. And so a good question to ask when we're working with this second technique is, what are the ways in which my mind inclines that creates distress for myself? So that's something you can ask yourself when you decide to take some time to reflect on these things, because that's how you can actually train your mind, is to get to know what are, the things that push my buttons. What are the top 3 or even the top 5? So in doing that, you can actually see what the possibilities are, to liberate yourself from these buttons. And the last thing comes back full circle to what the Buddha mentioned in the sutta, and that involves in inclining the mind towards the wholesome and away from the unwholesome. So recognizing, when the unwholesome is happening, and actually trying to work with its opposing force, like the example of the annoying person, and as much as you don't want to do it, really trying to focus on what is his or her good qualities. And because everyone has good qualities. Everyone, even Hitler. I hate to say it, but he had good qualities. How did he convince an entire nation, to do what they did, right? So his good quality was a certain charisma. Unfortunately, he used it in the wrong way, in a very unwholesome way. but he definitely had some good qualities, in order to influence all the people that he did. So the last thing is that I wanted to end with is some short passages from the Dhammapada. And this is a short collection of teachings from the Buddha, again having to do with the mind. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a corrupted mind, and suffering follows, as the wagon wheel follows the hoof of the ox. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a peaceful mind, and happiness follows, like a never-departing shadow. So I'm hoping you can have some reflection of this, what I've offered you, and thank you for your attention. I think we have some time for questions, if anybody has any. Oh, yes.
What do you think about desire without craving, or desire with moderation, or desire with mindfulness? Do you feel like we could ever get rid of desire, or we just learn to have desire without the clinging?
I think that desire is a very human emotion and something that all human beings experience. So through the practice, we can definitely move towards desire without clinging. Yeah, that's totally possible. And that's great because, you can, again, checking into your body, you can tell, okay, is this a wholesome desire? Or, because one of the practices I did with the shoes is, and actually one of my teachers, Donald Rothberg, told us to do this, not specifically with shoes, but just with, of course, because I feel so unique in having this desire. He was speaking about just retail in general, the way the media and advertising, tries to manipulate our minds to make us think that, oh, we have to have that thing. Otherwise, either we're uncool or we're just not up with the times if we don't spend the money to get it. So his practice was to go into a retail environment. So for me, it was a shoe store, and I told my partner, I'm like, you have to do this with me because I don't know what's going to happen. And go into my favorite shoe store and, look at the shoes and really get excited like I normally do when I walk in a shoe store about one or two pair of shoes I see that I absolutely want to have, but not buy anything and just really connect with my body. So I did that. My partner was like, oh, yeah, this sounds great. Let's do it. So we go, and it was so weird. I had never experienced this before, and it was so eye-opening. So I see a pair of shoes, and I start moving towards it, right? And I actually feel like this extreme energy because I'm trying to be aware of what's happening in my body, and it's like pulling out of me. And I feel almost like I'm going like this towards the shoes, except of course my hands aren't actually doing that, but it's like this force, and I'm just like, whoa, what is this, But yeah, so that was really interesting. And so that is my warning signal, right? I'm walking down Union Street or Fillmore, I see a shoe store in the horizon, and it's like ding, 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 ding. Watch out, So that's an example of why I really feel the body practice is so important. Yes.
So how about dealing, using the same technique, dealing with anxiety or fear and overwhelm? Like, my mind can try to process a lot of things at once, and then, tasks or ideas of, where I want to see my, my life go, or, it's like, and then it all gets
kind of all tumbled and tangled
and
together.
then it just,
Yeah.
and then the shutdown wants to start happening.
Right. Yeah. So there's several ways to work with that. The first thing is to discern the intensity of it. Because my example of fear is ever since 9/11, I've had a real bad fear of flying. I will still fly. But sometimes it gets to the point I'm on the airplane, and even though I know all the rational reasons behind why there's turbulence, I react in a way, and it's like the floor has totally disappeared from underneath me. I'm ungrounded, and my throat is like totally closing in, and I can't breathe. So when it's that kind of overwhelm, you have to find some way of distracting yourself. You can't do the body practice. I did it, oh my God, it was horrible. It was a white knuckle ride all the way 5 hours from the East Coast back here. And I found out later from my spiritual teacher, that's not a very skillful way when it's so intense. So when it's so intense that it's almost like becoming the anger that I talked about earlier, you really need to find a way to shift the energy. So for me on the plane, it might be watching a video, listening to music, or talking to someone. Now, if it's something that's obsessive, like the obsessive worrying, and you can't, it's like a broken record kind of thing, or, like the stress, like the pressure you feel because it's all this stuff I got to do at work, and if not, it's just going to be bad. So that kind of thing, you can find a simple way to change and shift the energy. And it can take the form of just going outside, taking a walk. If possible, I know it's difficult right in the middle of the city, but, we're lucky that we're surrounded by water. If there's any way to just look at water and just kind of try to let your mind rest, and most importantly, try to find your breath again. Just to give yourself a little bit of space. I mean, the obsessiveness will be there still. I mean, it's not eradicating it, but it will give you a break. Because you know how tiring that can be, right? To be obsessively worrying over and over about the same thing. I mean, if you check in with your body, you're like, oh, I'm so exhausted, right? So, so those two things I can offer you. Yeah.
Do you ever try and calm yourself in flight by bringing a carry-on full of shoes?
Yeah, take them out and look at them. Try them on. That's a good idea. Thank you, Tom.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, so what is the experience when you buy the shoes?
So when I buy the shoes, so I'm gratifying it, right? I'm gratifying this extreme, unhealthy, sensual desire. I feel a moment of relief. It's like, when you're trying not to eat that piece of chocolate because you're like, okay, I can't have this. I've overindulged, right? And then you finally, screw it. Take it. So it's that kind of like a brief feeling of satisfaction and like, yes, I did it. But then, like 2 days later, just like when I didn't buy the pair of shoes, it's exactly the same. I don't even think about them. In fact, I'm like, oh yeah, I bought those shoes like 2 years ago. I forgot I had them. I mean, that's terrible. Because then you realize, wow, what a waste of energy and all this angst and contraction that I spent in trying to get these things. It really doesn't matter in the long run. What really matters is the time I spend with my partner, with my kids, all the poignant things that come your way in daily life that make you feel joyful. I mean, that's more important than the satisfaction of this sensual desire. Whatever form it may take. So.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Do we have any announcements?
a new GBF directory. It's out as you exit, it's along the right-hand wall, stated December 10th, and represents the best efforts of a number of people to produce an accurate directory. It's not the entire membership. Some members have chosen not to participate in the directory, but it's there for the taking and the service of the Sangha. Next to it is a folder called the GBF markup copy. And we'd like you to use this to mark up and make any corrections to the existing membership directory. It's not intended to be used to add new names. If you want to add your name, please use the standard sign-up sheets that we routinely use.
Thank you. And just to clarify, that's not for commercial use, it's just for service of the Sangha, right?
Right. Each page includes this statement. Directory information is for the benefit of the GDF members and friends. The reader is responsible for considerate and respectful use. No public or commercial use is permitted.
Okay. Thank you. Other announcements? Yes, Bert.
The speaker next week is Tom Moon, and he's spoken here before. He's interested in looking at the interface between his Buddhist practice and psychotherapy. He's a psychotherapist in San Francisco. Works mostly with gay men, so he'll be here next week.
Thank you. Anything else? Do we have a host today? Dave?
Sure. We have treats. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. So if you find yourself lunging forward, just go for it. There's tea, and if you should have some, please, I have some soapy water, so just swish it around and rinse it out really good. We have a Dana bowl that I'll be coming around, and if you so can and feel inclined and feel very compassionate, please fill it up with whatever you'd like to donate. And afterwards, a number of us go to lunch, and you're more than welcome. Just kind of meet outside around 12:20, 12:25. And I think that's it.
Great. Is anyone joining us for the first time or returning after a long absence? Tom?
Yes.
Right? So welcome. Please, everyone circulate and welcome Tom. All right, Pauletta, would you lead us in dedication of merit?
Sure.
Easy, so you can actually call it that.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.